So you see, Mars is kind of like a guide to how to directing Neptune. You're trying to find simplicity, self-reliance, and you're trying to get perhaps a personal dedication. So in Mars, it's dedicated to what you're going to do. With Venus, it's dedicated around what you're going to get and what choices you make. So each one has its own different puzzle. Again, where that planet is, where the planets are in your chart, can tie into, if they tie into the Neptune, they tell you which planet's being affected by this vision. But if it's Neptune and Scorpio, there's going to be a physical, martial, or sexual, or muscular element to the vision, and to what you're doing to live up to it. When Neptune goes into Jupiter, into the Jupiter signs of Sag and Pisces, these are the signs of understanding, morality, and conscientiousness. So conscientiousness and sorrow or guilt are in Pisces, and understanding and misunderstanding are in Sag. That's the two aspects of Jupiter. So if Neptune's in there, there's a tendency to believe too much in what you understand. It's really a vast understanding. Oh, wow. And a vast compassion. These can be really incredibly humanitarian assets. But they can also be in the person that spends their time gambling in casinos or just gambling away or exaggerating, believing they're going to be lucky, or believing the opportunities are going to expand for them, believing everything's going to go. If you just go for it, you expand and it'll go for it without replenishing it. So misunderstanding and a faulty belief. You'll see this in fanatical religious groups or in really messianic places. Or if Neptune's in these signs, there's a tendency to go out in too many directions, to understand too much, to see from too many points of view. Depending on that point, if it comes down to who you're aligned with, say you know someone that's a Christian, someone that's a Muslim, and you're aligned with this way or that way, it could get compromised. Your own understanding could get compromised, or you could align one way, wrongly, rightly, but there's going to be multiple things there, and many temptations to believe this way or that way. So there'll be a search to find what's the real understanding. And if Neptune's there, the real understanding has to include some self-reliance, a sense of adventure, romance, but some self-reliance, not an indulgence of dependencies, not being dependent on one person's vision or another master's vision. Where do we get our understanding? Usually from teachers. But how do we get understanding without depending on the teachers? This is Neptune. But the capacity to exaggerate and to take it to extremes, if it becomes a bad habit and it's tied up to a misunderstanding, whether that's involved with gambling or whatever, or speculating or being on the market, so many ways to invest, one can encourage oneself to go so far and one wouldn't have to break. So it might go along fine for a while and then break, and then there's huge losses and bigger misunderstandings. So you can't see the exact thing, but you say, usually you back up to this. It's just another consideration that comes in on the top of the normal chart that you can see. It's not enough to eclipse it. We'll see other factors of how this vision works in by the house position, by the aspects, but in the sign there's already a tendency, a sensitivity to this type of vision and these type of dependencies and these type of guilts and sorrows, and for it to act out in these sorts of ways. And there's always a work with Neptune to not make it more complicated. Don't increase guilt. Don't increase sorrow. If you can live each day and each moment and not increase guilt, you'll live a good life. But if you do wrong things, you can be sorry, you can try and fix them, but it takes time. So belief in God, not belief in God, belief in luck, well, all of the beliefs and in one's understandings. So sometimes you get lost in totally believing in the understanding of the teachers that you have, and they may not be that good. You're just believing in them totally, and to you they're the ultimate, but they may have flaws in them that you didn't see that may come up to bother you later on. Even practicing what you preach, being able to be self-reliant and living up to what your own expectations of understanding is, that's part of the puzzle in Neptune and Sag and in Pisces. When Neptune gets up into Aquarius and Capricorn, into the Saturn ruled signs, Saturn's the discipline. Neptune's going to weaken or fantasize the discipline. It's not going to make the discipline more stronger. It's going to make it either more obsessive, more fanatical, or weaker, or less ambitious, or really make it a little more socially conscious. But it's not going to make it more rigid or more structured. That weakness is going to affect the understanding and how one guides one's actions and makes choices. These things, this is how Neptune will fall into the chart. Your Saturn can be totally independent, not have any connections to it. Not any obvious connections to it, and it may not be so shown, but it can, when you start to see the Neptune factors in Capricorn and Aquarius, they're going to be guilts and complexes tied up to your dad, whereas in Cancer it's the mom. And when it's to your dad, it's to your own respect, to your own dignity, to your own ability to work. And the Saturn is trying to do it, but Neptune, I don't believe, I can't, why work that hard? I'll take this, I'll go this way. But it tends to weaken that ambition and the career choices. It tends to make people go to more artistic directions or socially conscious directions than straight business. So, but the Neptune being influenced by Capricorn and Aquarius, they're both strategic or planning or defensive signs. So it's defensive beliefs. There's a tendency to have beliefs in a limited way. I'll accept this one, I'll take this. And there's always something's not as the same. Some puzzle will come out from this. But with the Neptune, there's a need to be disciplined around one's beliefs. There's a tendency to be inhibited and have more conservative beliefs, or to try and restrict the beliefs, or make rules around them or regulations around them more, or to feel you can't do enough work to get over to them. But it does weaken the ambition. Why should I go get this job? Why should I go get that when I could just do this? Or maybe I want to work at something. Maybe I want to work at being the dreamer, the artist, and I don't want to work. I want to avoid any other type of work. So the weakening of Saturn, that's weakening the bones and the teeth. It's weakening your backbone. It has an effect on all your structures and plans that shows out over a long period of time. If you stay at the same job with a commitment for 30 years, 40 years, you get retirement, comes up and they give you a watch and a thank you. And that's all you've been exposed to your whole life. Whoa. That's a pretty narrow world compared to jobs that could have exposed you to a lot more people, a lot more situations. There's quite a spectrum between how people live, so many different ways. So Neptune is this presence that comes in. It creates a wonder. It creates an imagination about something. It sits there like a puzzle. You know there's visions there. You know there's dreams there. You also know there's dependencies, codependencies, sorrows, guilts, addictions. A lot of pathos can be there as well, the vision and the pathos. It gets resolved by self-reliance and by dedicated service to helping a good cause. Those are two. There may be many other ways you can resolve. There are many other ways, but Neptune is. If you're seeing that, Neptune's usually working well. If it's a dedicated person, so you see it's working well. But there'll still be some. You're looking at where the confusion or the gullibility come in. So someone may have a job in a company running up, and maybe they're showing favoritism to people they work with them, and they have the business, but they have employers who aren't working well, employees who aren't working well for them. And there's complications of who's reliable there and what discipline gets imposed. So Saturn being self-discipline and Neptune being self-reliance and vision, they can try and move away from each other. They have difficulty working together, but it's healthy when they do. So there's a need for a practical vision, a practical self-reliant vision when Neptune's in Capricorn or Aquarius. When it's in Pisces or Sagittarius, there's no need for a practical. In fact, the practical is almost an insult. There's a need for an expansive, vast, all-encompassing understanding or belief. So, okay, we've just gone through all the steps with Neptune. As soon as I finished this, I wondered, okay, words don't express it properly. This is a complex. This is a whole dimension of belief, feelings, visions, sorrows, guilts, dependencies. Wow. We can get dependent on coffees. We can get dependent on sugar. We can be dependent on beer, or on alcohol, or on drugs. Well, so many things. We can be dependent on sex. We can be dependent on vanity and looking good. There's so many ways we can create visions and codependencies. If someone believes in me, then I must be really good. If I'm really good, someone's got to believe in me. But someone doesn't have to believe in you. They can meet your ideas and have their own visions too. So there's still, even though you have a factor or a predisposition, there's still many ways you can live your life. It's not a restriction. It's just a unique factor that, if you take care of it, opens up options for you. If you're not living properly, you're not living respectfully, responsibly, the personal planets will get you in trouble, and these outer planets will really magnify the trouble to great complexes. But when you're first working with the chart, when you look at planets and signs, you see this generational factors. The whole generation thinks like this, so what's the blame? But then, I mean, we're still dealing, like, I'm in my 70s, born at the end of the war. I'm still dealing with generational complications of being the child of someone who survived the war. I mean, you see it as extreme with the kids of Holocaust parents who escaped the concentration camps, who got out eventually, and brought up their kids to be with a certain amount of fear to overcome this. And then some people stay over-controlled. Some people have to break away from their parents. It's very complex. Well, in some way, anywhere there's a war, there's a 30-year effect. There's a lifetime effect in the things that come into your life and how you dealt with it. Wow. So, puzzles.